Hello and welcome. So I wanted to make sort of a music creation tutorial. This is one of the ways I go about making music. It's not the only way, it's just one of the ways I enjoy for one of the styles of music I quite enjoy making as well. So we're going to be making some chiptune music, and what that basically means is back in the day, old consoles, they generated music for video games, and they sounded a very distinct way. I try to grab back to that nostalgia and those limitations they were forced to use to make music and try to do the same in the modern era. So what I have loaded up here in Ableton is basically my writing environment for the NES. So I have 5 channels loaded with various instruments I've created with samples from my NES. And they're supposed to emulate what the NES is actually capable of. So the NES has a single sample channel. You can play like kicks and snares and stuff. Those are some kicks. That has a noise channel where it can only play various types of noise. So let me actually demonstrate that. That's what they used to use for hi-hats, explosions, sound effects in games, and what have you. It has a triangle channel. That's what most people use for bass, or something like in Zelda, where it sounds quite like a wind instrument when played up top. They would do melodies and stuff like that with the triangle. I'm going to use it for bass. Then we have 2 pulse channels. These can play 4 different types of square wave. And let me demonstrate those now. So that is a very raspy, thin pulse. We can change that to kind of a more medium-sized one. And then we have the full 50% duty cycle pulse, where it's going to sound very clean and full-bodied. And you'll notice, this is a good kind of a turning point I should mention. Each one of these channels can only play a single note at a time. So 5 total channels, 5 total notes, where it's actually less than that because noise isn't a note, sample, those aren't notes either. And technically kick will have like a frequency that pitches downwards, but that's not a note being played. So we basically only have 3 note polyphony to work with. And that's one of the limitations that I find quite fun in chiptunes. You have to overcome the lack of notes you're allowed to play with cool and neat tricks, and we'll touch on that here in a second. So let's actually make something. I've been rambling, telling you my setup. So let's put some kicks and snares in. I'm just going to go for a simple beat. That's just the vibe I want, and it's also easier for this tutorial. So let's go for a kick and a snare. Alright, so kick, snare, let's play it. It's just going to be a super simple rock beat, and we're going to add some shuffle in the hi-hats here in a second. Let me play the clip. Okay, that's very slow for me. I like the beat, but let's just speed up the tempo. Alright, that's fine. 170 is a good BPM. So that is the drums done. So let's move on to the hi-hats. We may add a fill or something for the kick and snare later, but not right now. So let's find a hi-hat sound. Now there's going to be lots of unusable sounds here, but then there's going to be some just generic noise we can use for a hi-hat. Down here. There we go. That sounds like a hi-hat to me. So let's plug some stuff in. I'm going to go pretty short and maybe a little bit longer for these because these are going to be the pulse. I'm actually adding these on the upbeats, so it's going to be a pretty typical rock groove that you're very familiar with. Oops, let me play the clip. Okay, now I said before, I mentioned this already, I want it to be kind of shuffly, so the hi-hat's where that's going to happen. So let's add some shuffly notes. I just know from past experiences where the kind of shuffle notes are, but you can plug and play, experiment, trial and error. That's what it's all about. Let's play this. Okay, it's getting shufflier, and let's add another shuffle note. Okay, that's where I want to keep it. Let's just do some stuff with the velocities real quick, just because a real human would not play a hi-hat in the same volume every single hit. There'd be some variation. So the main hits, those longer hits that we have here, those are going to be full volume. So I'm going to deselect those, and then we're just going to lower the volume of everything else just a tiny bit. And what that's going to do is it's going to humanize it, and it's actually going to lend more to the shuffly feel of it, because as a shuffle groove is played by a player, he does just that to make you feel more into the shuffle because of the way he's playing it. So we've done that here. Okay, subtle, but it's there. Now we can actually play some chords. I'm excited. This is where the actual body of the song is going to come to life, because literally what we've done is we've just made a simple rock shuffle beat. And that's not a song. The chords are where the song happens. So let's choose a sound for one. I like nasal stuff for chords. I'm just going to go with what I enjoy. You don't have to do what I do. You may not have the instruments I have, but we're going to go nasally. Now we're running into a problem. Now watch my hand. I'm holding down a chord. But what do you hear? You hear a single note. That's because the NES is not capable of playing more than one note on a specific channel. So we have to cheat. We have to do what they did back in the day. We do a technique called broken chords or arpeggiation, where it cycles through the notes of a chord very fast and they blend together and it sounds like they're harmonizing. So I have that set up already. Okay, so that actually sounds like a chord now, and that's actually one of the reasons old music sounds so distinct, is because they were forced to do a technique like that to get more polyphony, more excitement in their songs. So we're going to do the same thing because we have the same limitations. Now, I have a free running speed set up for this arpeggiator, but I actually want to sync it to my tempo. I think that'll just be a lot cleaner of a sound. So I'm going to turn sync on, and we're going to move the speed as we're listening to the beat to get the tempo we want. Now, I just know from a little bit of foresight that I'm going to choose a chord that's going to be playing 4 notes at a given point, because I want to have 3 for the main chord. Oh, let me turn this back off. 3 for the main chord, and then I'm going to have a harmony note playing on the top that's going to be changing. That's where our variation is going to happen. So it's going to sound something like this. Some flavor of that. So what I'm going to do is just hold down 4 notes, and we're going to adjust that speed. Let me turn sync back on, hold down 4 notes, play the beat, and adjust the speed. There we go. I like that. Now, we could have had it slower. It could have been like a lead harmony thing, but these are supposed to be our chords. They're going to be pretty quick and pretty saturated, so I like it right there. So we can actually hit record and put these chords down. So I'm going to do this in chunks. You don't have to do it in chunks if you're a capable player on the keyboard. So for example, I could just hit record and just play the lead and the chords at the very same time like this. But I don't have a lot of dexterity or attention most of the time to do it like that. So I'm just going to part it out. First, I'm just going to lay down the chords only, and then we're going to focus on the melody later. This is so our attention and our dexterity can be more focused on the task at hand and not try to do too much at once. So let me just lay down only the chords. I'm going to go for like an F minor, G minor, just because I know I can do a lot with those chords. So let me just hit record. Okay, now my playing wasn't the cleanest. We can quantize it here. Basically, just you see all the gaps and the ends of notes aren't exactly the same and they don't line up to the grid. we're going to easily hear those mistakes because of the arpeggiator amplifying those mistakes. We have to quantize it or it's not going to sound right. And plus, this was computer music back in the day. Computers were they were playing this for us humans, so they were more locked into the tempo and the groove. So we're going to do that here. Quantized, done. Now it's perfectly on the grid, perfectly in sync. Excuse me. So let's play it and hear what we have so far. Okay, that is a solid foundation for which we are going to build up this tune from. So what I'm going to do is just double this real quick, just because that's how long the progression is going to be. And then we're going to start playing that lead line on top of it. So let's move this over to the timeline, and we can start overdubbing it. Let me activate those. I'm going to extend these out so they don't quit playing on us. And we're going to select the clip we want to overdub, make sure overdub is turned on, and we're going to hit record. Okay, I like that. I'm going to keep it. Let's consolidate and quantize everything just so it's locked into the grid. Okay, I'm going to keep that. That is what we're going to go with. And we can actually expand on some other stuff. First, let's liven up the shuffle a tiny bit before we move on to bass, which is going to be the fun part. I want the variation to happen maybe like every that length or so. So consolidate this. We're going to loop it back out, and we'll edit this chunk of hi-hats here. So I'm going to drop out a couple notes and maybe add another one in just for some spice, some variation. So I'm going to delete this note, and I'm going to add a note here. So this nearing the end is going to be sort of a quick double hi-hat, sort of a flourish, and it's just going to add more variation. So let's hear what this sounds like first. Okay, I like that. Let me get this out of the way so we can kind of focus on it. Okay, I like that. The pause here with the no note kind of gives some space, and then there's a kind of a double quick pickup going on with this extra note. I like that. Let's keep that in there, and let's actually add a fill on the drums now. I'm gonna do about every half, so it's only gonna happen twice. So consolidate this, loop it, drag it out, and we're gonna add a fill at the very end because that's where fills happen. So a quick kick before the snare, and then we're going to land on another kick to basically foreshadow the one coming up, because this is like 16 bars, like a full rotation, and there needs to be kind of a fill to cue up on that next one rotation coming in. So let's play this. We're going to focus on this fill coming up, so... Okay, something in the pocket, something very short and sweet but impactful. That's exactly what I wanted. Okay, so no need to digress any further. I want to make some bass. Bass is where it's at, people. So let's plug some bass in. So what I want to do for the bass, I'm going to play it pretty safe, and this is actually good practice anyway. I'm going to choose some notes that are already in my chords. Rather than just, oh, I have a blank canvas here, I'm going to start plugging in some notes and hoping that they work, dragging them around, wasting a bunch of time. I'm just going to go with what already sounds good. So choose notes from your chords. And that's why I chose to do the chords first. So instead of being boring and just going F, G, like the chords already do, we're going to try to be a little more interesting than that. We can do better. You can do better. Let's not do this first F here, but actually let's do a C, because I like playing in C minor, and I was actually thinking of this F minor and G minor chord on top of sort of a C minor feel. It's probably not going to be in C minor, but I'm just going to use C for now. That's the fifth of the chord. And I like using the root on this G as an idea. And we can choose the F from this one just because it's the same chord and it's going to be something different. So first start with C and then go to F. I think that's going to sound pretty good. And then there needs to be some repetition. Not really need, but I feel there should be some repetition. So we're going to go back to G. But instead of staying on the G and being boring, we're going to quickly move away from the G. So here's what's going to happen. Let me just visualize it for you by moving some of these notes around. Okay, so first we go to C, then we go to G, then we go to F, then we go back to G for some repetition. But let's quickly go to A sharp here, because it's a note in our chord. We have not used the third of a chord yet. So this is the I think minor third, yeah, minor third of G, and it's going to add some tension. And we want some tension before it repeats, for one, just because there's that tension release scenario happening. But also, our melody has a bunch of tension going on as well, if you remember. Because see these two notes here? They are a semitone away from each other. That's a lot of dissonance, and that's going to be a lot of tension as a result. So we want the bass to kind of mirror and reflect what's happening in the song. So it's going to have a little bit of a tension of its own. So let's go back to the bass and actually plug in these notes. Let me length 16 real quick so we have some room to work with. And let's find a bass note. Okay, about C1 is the octave we want to be at. So I'm going to do, I think, eighth notes, or a little bit longer than that maybe. Yeah, I'll do a little bit longer. So let's play the clip. Now, it's not going to be a very busy bass line. There's going to be a ton of space, and that's going to lend more to the shuffling nature of how it is. There's just short, quick bursts of bass that give a lot of impact when they're there and give space when they're not. So instead of just following the kick every time, I'm going to do every other kick, just so I have that much more space to then fill in something else, what the bass is doing, to make it more unique. But let's just do roots for now, and we'll fill in all that stuff later. Just same idea with the chords, just do it steps at a time. I knew I was going to have a bedrock of chords, a melody on top. Same with the bass. Root bass first, fill it all in, go back later, make your variations, make your little flourishes on top of that. So chords C, all the way to G, all the way to F. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a creative decision here. I don't like how low F is getting here. When a sound gets too low sometimes, it loses a lot of the punch. You stop feeling it in your chest, and it's more just a general vibration. I'm just going to have this an octave up. For a couple reasons. Just because I like it sitting there, and it's going to go up a significant amount from the low G, and that's going to be a stark change, and it's going to feel good. Let's go back to G real quick. Put it right here. And then remember what I said before, we're going to increase this up to A sharp. Also, I think I'm on the timeline still. I think I skipped some stuff. 1, 2, 3. Ah, that's where I got off. I shifted these too far forward. Okay, I thought that looked funny. All right. So let's play this and see what we have so far. Okay, lovely. It's actually sounding like a song now. because it has some harmony, some lead kind of stuff blended in with those chords, and it has some bass, it has a fill in the drums. We're all happy. We are sounding like a song. So now we can fill in some of these gaps with some actual bass line. So these are just the pulse of the song, sure, but to make the bass interesting, there's often more you can do. So we're going to do that now. So I'm going to stay safe again. I'm going to choose some notes from our chords and expand on that. It doesn't all have to be from the chords, and they're not going to be all from the chords. So I'm actually going to pick up this F again, this lonely F that we didn't use and discarded and said we didn't need you. We're actually going to say, no, F, we can use you. We're going to use you in the bass line still, even if you're not the root. So I'm going to do, let's see, shorter staccato notes starting on the snare and just evenly spaced. So this is our phrasing. We're going to move these notes to different notes, but here's what our phrasing is going to sound like. Now, I knew from the start I wanted sort of a shuffly reggae feel, and that's why I chose this sort of phrasing, because it's going to sound pretty reggae with this pulse, like da, a bum 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 bum, in the bass, because reggae does that a lot. So let's go down to that F. And then these notes can be anything we want. We can shift them on the scale, off the scale, part of the chords that we have, not part of the chords we have. So I'm going to do a mixture of the two. I'm going to go down to the F because I know it's safe. I'm going to go back to the C because I know it's safe. And then I'm just going to walk down the scale. Walking down the scale is a very safe thing to do, and it's going to be a very consistent way to get a good sound most scales. So let's just walk down. Okay, and let's see what we have. Awesome, I like it. We're going to keep this phrasing and keep this general structure throughout the whole bass line. We want there to be some repetition, as I keep saying, but it doesn't have to be repetition in the notes. It can just be the structure and phrasing. It kind of gives it a more cohesive feel to it. The listener knows what to expect. They know what's coming, even if they don't know the notes. So let's move this over. Now, I'm going to do something different here. I'm not going to do like this shape to where you see how these notes, they look like they're hanging off of like a ceiling, and those two C's being the ceiling. I don't want to do that to the G for a couple reasons. I don't want to be repetitive or too repetitive, and I don't want these notes down here not to be heard because they're very, very low. Listen to this one. That's not a very good bass note. It's just too low. Same thing with the D. So what we're going to do is shift this up to where it matches with the root of the scale. Because remember, this C wasn't the root of the chord before, this F was. So this shape, this bottom note, that is very safe to put at the root of that chord, and we're going to do that here at the G, because this G is literally the root of that chord before. So this is a safe place to put that. Let's make sure everything is still in the scale though, because when you're moving big blocks of notes like this in sections and you move them and transpose them, they're not always going to be in scale most of the time. This one, it looks like it is. Let's play what we have. Okay, I like that. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to move this big block of notes over here. Now, here's another thing I want to mention for bass lines. I don't want to go too far outside of my tonal box. If I start reaching too high, it's not going to sound like a bass anymore, and it's going to lose some of the punch. So sure, this F is the root, but remember we increased it one octave up. I actually want to keep these blocks of notes underneath that ceiling, just so it sounds similar to a bass still. Okay, so we're going to hang it off the ceiling just like the first one did, even though F is the root of the chord, and this bottom note was originally typed in as the root of the chord. We can break our rules though. I just want to make sure everything's in scale. This note looks like it is not, so I shift it down one to where it is in scale. Let's hear that so far. that sounded fine, passable to my ears. I even enjoy it. So let's go ahead and bring in some more repetition, because G was a note we played over here, and it plays back on this end too. It comes back. So let's just copy this. No movement has to be done, and it actually does something cool now that I look at it. So this shape, even though it's the same as last time, the bass moves up to this A sharp, remember? And look at what this note is right here. It actually ends up on that A sharp. So what that's going to do, a short burst of the note we're about to land to, is going to have a little bit of foreshadowing. The listener is going to hear that note, and then the bass is going to come in, and they're going to be like, wow, that note kind of foreshadowed my feeling, and now it's here, and now it's in all its glory. So let's hear what we have. Beautiful, beautiful. I like the way that meshed up perfectly. At the very end, just like the drums, I like to put a little flourish at the end, like a fill, basically a bass fill. Now, not anything busy, just maybe a note that's held out. I want to start it on, I think, a snare. Let's see where the snare is. Okay, so the snare is where my cursor's at. Let's go back to our chords and see what we're allowed to play. These notes, I actually don't want to play anything from the ending chord. I'm going to take the mentality of that little A sharp foreshadowing and do the same with the whole measure. So this F is the root of this chord. I'm going to have that as my fill note, because it's going to foreshadow going back to the F chord. Even though the bass is not playing F, and that's actually, there's going to be a little bit of a saving grace there. So I'm not filling the F note to another F note, maybe an octave lower. It's actually going to resolve to the C. So let's go to F. And I want to have it feel like a hammer-on, like this is the guitarist in me coming in. So I'm going to do a little bit of this business. So this E doesn't have to be in scale, and it's not. It's just there to make this note feel like a hammer-on. So let's hear that. Okay, I'm happy with that. It may not be the best in the world, but I'm happy with it. So we have a fill in our drums, we have our shuffly hi-hat pattern going, we have some chords we like with a harmony on top of it, and then we have our bass line. It sounds very, very reggae, just like what I was going for. So this is the point at which you could stop, you can put a lead over it, you can make another section, repeat this, and make another variation of the same thing. Delete an instrument, change only what one instrument's doing, kind of do what you feel is like your creative flex and what you want to do to the song. So what I want to do to complete the reggae feel is create that all too familiar upbeat pattern on like what the guitar normally plays. Now, we already have some chords going on, and I don't have another channel apart from this. I'm saving for leads to actually implement that. So instead of using another note to create that feel, I'm going to use tone. And this is very powerful, especially in chiptune music. These are the limitations that you have to hurdle over to get the sound you want with the sound channels you've been given. So I'm going to render this out. Instead of playing just what I'm literally holding down, and that's what the MIDI's recording, it's not giving you every little fluttery note. So let me render this first, and then we're able to manipulate it in the way that I have in mind. You'll see, it'll become clear here in a second. So let me just quickly render this. Insert audio track. We will call this broken chord. And then we're going to record into another track. Oop, these are, why am I creating audio tracks? Silly me, silly me. These need to be MIDI tracks. So broken chord. Another MIDI track. We will call this record. So we route broken chord into record. We arm it so we can record, and we drop our note information into it. And then we arpeggiate it the exact same way so we get the same notes. So let me copy that. Let me paste it in. Okay, so now this channel is going to be doing the exact same thing as the Pulse 1 channel. It's just not going to be playing any audio. So let's actually record this. Okay, so those are recorded. Now we can actually just replace our old audio with it. Let me set that down, make sure it's in the timeline correctly. And we can turn off all that arpeggiation stuff. So we can just turn off broken chords, chord sync can stay on or off, and it's gonna sound the exact same. So let me delete these MIDI tracks so we don't need anymore. And let's hear the non-difference. Sounds the exact same, and that's what we wanted. So now we can manipulate it in a specific way to get that upbeat reggae feel. And here's how I'm gonna do it. I chose the nasally waveform on purpose because I knew I was gonna do this. So the very antithesis of the nasally waveform is going to be the 50% duty cycle one. So here's how it sounds just normal. Has a lot of body, has a lot of girth, but we don't want that to be constant. We want it to be nasally with very short bursts, and here's where we're going to get our upbeat of that 50% style actual form. So let's create some automation lines. Let's go to the left, the right, add those in. Now we got to find where our upbeat is. So let me just play it. Okay, so it looks like these white areas on my grid. So I'm going to highlight some area here, about half, and then change it to a different waveform. Now I don't know if I need to go to 50% actually. I'm gonna see what 75% will get me because I don't want it to be too stark of a difference. It's just adding some flavor. So let me copy paste all this, and let me just do this across the entire track. Lots of copy paste, lots of copy paste. Okay, hopefully those are all in the right spot. Let's hear what it sounds like. And I'm actually just going to solo this for now. See, we have our upbeats, so that's going to give way more reggae feeling to this track now that that's there. So let's hear what it all sounds like. Beautiful. And I'm actually going to call that done. You could go further with it. You can use the same steps to create more sections of the song. But we have our track. Now the only thing left is to create a melody on top of it. And that's what I'll leave you with.
Alright, sorry for this sudden edit right here, but while editing this video, I decided I wanted to do something different for the ending. So I re-recorded the whole tutorial again, but ended up not liking most of it. So I'm just going to splice in the ending. Enjoy.
So I'm not actually going to do anything else to this. We're actually at the point where we can start arranging this into a track. So I'm going to turn my loop point off. So we have our chords, the melody on top of the chords, changing tone for the upbeat, a solid bass line, variating hi-hats, and a fill in the kick and snare. So we can use these components to create a small little tune. So what I want to do is just, let's copy paste everything and delete a couple lines. So the very start of the song isn't going to have bass. Delete the bass. The very start of the song I don't feel should have the kick and the snare. So the intro is going to be chords, hi-hats. It's going to establish the root of the song. And then it's going to go into what we've created. Kick, snare, hi-hat, bass, the whole gamut. And let's just say it repeats twice. The whole progression. Okay, so at this point, it can be playing a lead at this section. So we have an intro, we have the next part of the progression with the bass and the kick coming in, and this third section, that's maybe where a lead can start. And leads usually don't carry on for a single measure, although often they do. I want to have a lead maybe that's 2 full rotations of the measure. And at the very end, I don't really have an outro in mind, but we can still use just what we have, and that will be a sufficient outro. It's going to be short and sweet. I'm going to get rid of the kick and the bass. Let's see, where should I remove them? Yeah, about there. That last snare hit is going to be like the last hit of the drums, and we're not going to quite make it to that dissonant hit of the bass yet. So I think this is a sufficient outro. Let me just hear just that part. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to take out the hi-hats. I like them staying in there. And I might not want this snare either. Let's remove that. Okay, yeah, I don't want that snare there. So we have our song structure. This is our whole song. We have our intro. We have the next progression. We have 2 measures of lead, with the outro just being some drop off of the bass and the kicks. So that is our song done. I'm going to leave you with a bit of lead playing. Hopefully I don't sound like crap. I'm just going to try to improvise over it, and we're going to listen to the track, and I bid you farewell.